A 12-foot alien halted a war by saving the man everyone thought she'd crush. They called it impossible. She called it love. Where were you when humanity learned that kindness can break the laws of physics? Tell me your city, and subscribe to see what comes next. Liam Park had spent 27 years perfecting the art of being invisible. At 5'7", he'd mastered the skill of blending into crowds, keeping his head down, and occupying the smallest possible space in any room. The map archives section of Seattle Central Library suited him perfectly. Few people ventured into the dusty rows of cartographic history, and those who did rarely needed help from the shy librarian who practically lived among the rolled papers and leather-bound atlases. Tuesday started like any other. Coffee at 8:47 a.m., reorganizing the Pacific Northwest collection. Lunch at his desk while reading about the Lewis and Clark expedition for the 100th time. But Liam didn't know yet that this particular Tuesday would end with him unconscious on the library floor. Some Tuesdays are just like that. The door to the archives section opened at 2:34 p.m. Liam glanced up from his restoration work on a 1890s maritime chart and immediately looked back down. Someone tall had entered. Very tall. He heard the distinctive sound of someone ducking through a doorway designed for normal-sized humans. "Excuse me," a voice said. It was soft, almost musical, with an accent he couldn't quite place. "I'm looking for information about your planet's oceans." Liam looked up, then up some more. Then his neck started hurting from looking up. The woman standing before him was 12 feet tall. Her skin had a pearlescent blue quality that caught the afternoon light streaming through the high windows. White hair fell in an intricate braid down her back, and her features, while clearly not human, possessed a delicate elegance that made his brain temporarily forget how to form words. Liam started, then stopped. His mouth had gone completely dry. "Oceans. Right. We have those. Books about those." She tilted her head slightly, studying him with eyes that shifted between silver and pale blue. "You are the archives specialist? Your identification says Liam Park." He looked down at his name badge as if confirming his own identity. "Yes, that's me, Liam Park, person who works here." Great job, brain, he thought, really smooth. "I am Avelia," she said, executing what might have been a slight bow. Except it brought her face down to merely 8 feet above the ground. "Cultural liaison for the Tevaran delegation. I'm studying Earth's marine ecosystems for comparison with our homeworld." Liam had seen the news, of course. Everyone had. First contact 6 months ago. The Tevarans, a peaceful species from a water-rich planet, establishing diplomatic relations. But seeing one on television was different from having one standing in his quiet archive section, making him feel like a child playing dress-up in his father's work clothes. "Right," he managed. "Marine ecosystems. I can help with that." He stood up, immediately regretting it, when he realized that standing made the height difference even more obvious. "Follow me, please." "If you can fit." He led her through the narrow aisles between the archive shelves. Behind him, he could hear her careful footsteps, the soft sound of her breathing, the occasional rustle as she had to turn sideways to fit through gaps that he walked through comfortably. "This must be difficult," Avelia said suddenly. "I apologize. I should have requested the documents be brought to a larger space." "No, it's fine," Liam said quickly, stopping at a shelf of maritime references. "I'm used to tight spaces. They're actually kind of comforting." He paused, realizing how that sounded. "That probably sounds weird." "Not at all," she replied. There was something in her tone, something gentle that made him turn around. She was crouched now, bringing herself down to his level, though she still towered over him. "On Tevara, I am considered average height. Here I am what your media calls a giant. It is adjusting." Their eyes met, and Liam felt something shift in his chest. She wasn't just some alien dignitary. She was someone trying to navigate a world not built for her, just like he'd spent his whole life navigating a world that made him feel too small. The adjusting goes both ways. he said softly. Then, because prolonged eye contact made him nervous, he turned back to the shelf. These are our comprehensive ocean studies, temperature patterns, currents, marine life diversity. There's also... He reached for a book on the top shelf, standing on his toes and stretching. His fingers brushed the spine but couldn't quite grasp it. Without a word, Avelia reached over him, her arm extending with that impossible length, and pulled the book down with ease. She held it out to him, and for a moment their hands touched as he took it. Her skin was cooler than human skin, smooth like polished stone. "Thank you," Liam said. What happened next would be debated by his brain for weeks afterward. He turned to explain the book's contents, looking up to meet her eyes. She was gazing down at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Curiosity? Amusement? Something else? Then Avelia smiled. It was a beautiful smile, genuine and warm, and it completely destroyed any remaining composure Liam had left. "You know," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "you are exactly the perfect height." Liam's heart did a strange stuttering thing in his chest. Perfect height for what? Her smile widened slightly. For kissing. The world tilted. Or maybe Liam tilted. Either way, the floor suddenly rushed up to meet him. The book slipped from his hands, and everything went dark. The last thing he heard was Avelia's alarmed voice. "Oh no! Did I break him?" When consciousness returned, it came with the smell of antiseptic and the sound of beeping machines. Liam's eyes opened slowly, focusing on the white ceiling tiles of what was clearly a hospital room. His head hurt. His dignity hurt worse. "He's waking up," a familiar musical voice said. Liam turned his head to see Avelia sitting on what looked like 3 chairs pushed together, creating a bench that could support her weight. She was hunched over, making herself as small as possible in the human-sized hospital room, and her expression was absolutely miserable. "I am so sorry," she said immediately. "I was told humans sometimes have this reaction to surprise, but I didn't think... I should have been more careful with my words. In my culture, direct statements of attraction are considered polite. Here, I understand now they can be... overwhelming." Liam tried to sit up, then decided lying down was safer. "Did you carry me here?" "Yes." "You weighed very little." "Like holding a sleeping cat." "That's not an insult," she added quickly. "Cats are highly regarded on my world. We consider them the perfect life form. Small, efficient, deadly when necessary, but mostly interested in comfort and affection." Despite everything, Liam laughed. It came out as more of a wheeze, but it was a laugh. "You think humans are like cats?" "I think you specifically might be," Avelia said. There was a hint of a smile returning to her face. "You work among old papers and quiet spaces. You are careful and precise. You make yourself small in big spaces." She paused. "And you are very soft when unconscious." Liam felt his face heating up. "I'm sorry I fainted. That's probably the least impressive response to someone saying they want to kiss you." "You did not want to kiss me?" Avelia's face fell. "No, I mean, yes. Liam took a breath. This conversation was happening. He was having this conversation with a 12-foot-tall alien who had just casually mentioned wanting to kiss him. His life had officially become stranger than any science fiction novel he'd ever read. "I just wasn't expecting... look at me, and look at you. You're... large," Avelia finished quietly. "I was going to say beautiful," Liam said. The words came out before his brain could stop them. "But yes, also large. And I'm not." They looked at each other across the hospital room. Avelia's expression was unreadable, those silver blue eyes studying him with an intensity that made him want to either hide under the blankets or say something else incredibly stupid. She stood up slowly, her head nearly touching the ceiling tiles. Then she did something unexpected. She laughed. It was a warm sound, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Liam Park," she said, "I have traveled across space to study your world." I have learned that humans eat cheese that has been deliberately spoiled, that you have entire buildings dedicated to the history of maps, that you keep small predators in your homes and let them rule you, that you create art that serves no survival purpose except to make you feel things. She took a step closer to his bed. And now I have learned that you think our size difference is the strange part of this situation. Liam felt himself smiling. When you put it that way. Would you like to have coffee with me tomorrow? Avelia asked. I promise to approach the topic of kissing more gradually, perhaps over several weeks, with warning signs. That sounds... Liam paused, reality creeping back in. Wait, do you even drink coffee? Is it safe for Taverans? I have no idea, Avelia admitted. But I would very much like to find out, with you, if you promise not to faint again. I promise to try, Liam said. Something warm was spreading through his chest, something that felt dangerously close to hope. Fair warning, though, I'm not good at this, dating, socializing, being interesting. You work in a map archive, Avelia said. You know the entire history of human ocean exploration. You faint when you're overwhelmed instead of becoming aggressive. You apologize for being short. She crouched down, bringing her face level with his hospital bed. Liam Park, you are the most interesting person I have met on your entire planet. He swallowed hard. Tomorrow, then. Coffee. I know a place with reinforced outdoor furniture. Perfect, Avelia said. Then she added softer, And Liam? I meant what I said. You really are the perfect height, for me. After she left, Liam lay in the hospital bed staring at the ceiling, his heart doing complicated things in his chest. Somewhere in the building, a nurse was probably filing a report about the alien who'd carried in an unconscious librarian like he weighed nothing. Somewhere, his life was becoming something he'd never imagined. But he couldn't stop smiling. And he didn't want to. The coffee shop owner looked at Avelia, then at Liam, then back at Avelia, then at his outdoor furniture, and finally sighed the sigh of a man who'd already had a long day, and it was only 10 a.m. I'll get the construction grade tables from the back, he muttered. 20 minutes later, Liam and Avelia sat at what was essentially a reinforced picnic table meant for large outdoor events, while curious patrons pretended not to stare from inside the cafe. Avelia held a cup of coffee in both hands, studying it like it might explode. On 3, Liam suggested, raising his own cup. On 3, Avelia agreed. They both drank. Liam's was his usual order. Avelia's face went through a remarkable journey of expressions. Surprise, confusion, disgust, reconsideration, and finally something approaching delight. This is terrible, she said, taking another sip. Why am I drinking more of it? That's coffee, Liam laughed. Welcome to Earth. We're all caffeinated and slightly miserable about it. Fascinating. Avelia took another long drink, draining half the cup. And you consume this every day? Sometimes twice a day. Your species is braver than I thought. She set the cup down carefully, and Liam noticed how deliberate all her movements were, as if she was constantly aware of her strength. Tell me something, Liam Park. In your map archives, what is your favorite discovery? Not the most important. Your favorite. No one had ever asked him that before. People usually asked about the most valuable map or the oldest, or made jokes about GPS making his job obsolete. There's this map, he started, feeling his enthusiasm building despite his shyness. It's from 1502 Portuguese, and it shows the coastline of Brazil. But there's this little notation in the corner barely visible. The cartographer wrote, "Here be beauty we have no words for." Not "here be dragons or warnings," just beauty. Avelia was silent for a moment, her silver blue eyes fixed on him with an intensity that made his heart skip. You love that, she said softly. That someone 500 years ago saw something wonderful and wanted to share it, even though they couldn't quite describe it. Yes, Liam breathed. No one had ever understood that before. On Tevara, Avelia said, leaning forward slightly, we have something similar. In our oldest star charts, There are coordinates marked as songs the universe sings. We can detect nothing there with our instruments, but the cartographer insisted they heard something. We still send listening probes there, hoping to hear what they heard. They looked at each other, and Liam felt something click into place. They weren't just two beings from different worlds trying to date. They were two people who understood that maps were really about the stories of those who made them. "Can I try something?" Avelia asked suddenly. "It will seem strange?" "Everything about this is already strange," Liam pointed out. "In a good way." Avelia reached across the table. Her hand was easily 3 times the size of his. She held it palm up, waiting. Liam stared at it for a moment, then slowly placed his hand in hers. Her fingers closed around his hand with infinite care, like someone handling the most fragile piece of crystal. She didn't grip, just held, her thumb resting gently against his knuckles. "Antevara," she said quietly. "To touch hands like this means you trust someone not to break you. It is our highest form of respect. I wanted—" She paused, and Liam realized with shock that she was nervous. "I wanted you to know that I will always be careful with you." "Avelia," Liam said, his voice rough, "I'm not that fragile." "Perhaps," she said, "but I am that strong. There is a difference." They sat like that for a long moment, hands joined across the reinforced table, while the world continued around them. Inside the cafe, someone dropped a cup. A car honked somewhere. The sun moved higher in the morning sky. But Liam didn't notice any of it. He was too busy trying not to cry in the middle of a coffee shop. Over the next 2 weeks, they fell into a pattern. Avelia would visit the library every day, ostensibly to research Earth's ecosystems, but really to spend time with Liam. He would show her maps, explain historical trade routes, point out how cartographers used to draw sea monsters in unexplored waters. She taught him about Tevaran stellar navigation, how her people could feel gravitational currents the way humans felt wind. She showed him pictures of her homeworld, vast oceans stretching between archipelagos of floating cities, everything built on a scale that made his head hurt trying to comprehend. On the 8th day, she met the cat. Liam had brought Small Tyrant to work in a carrier for a vet appointment later that afternoon. The orange tabby, sensing Avelia's presence, had immediately begun yowling his displeasure at being caged. "What is that sound?" Avelia asked, genuine alarm in her voice. "That," Liam sighed, "is Small Tyrant. He's expressing his opinions about his temporary imprisonment." He opened the carrier. Small Tyrant, all 9 pounds of indignant feline, strutted out, took one look at Avelia's massive form, and did what any reasonable cat would do. He walked directly up to her, sat down, and began grooming himself, completely unimpressed. "Oh," Avelia breathed. She crouched down, making herself as small as possible, which still left her at about 6 feet tall. "Oh, he's perfect. May I?" "You can try," Liam said, "but he's pretty particular about who touches him." Avelia extended one finger, bigger than the cat's entire head, and gently touched Small Tyrant's ear. The cat paused his grooming, considered this development, and then head-butted her finger with enough force to make his own head wobble. The sound Avelia made was somewhere between a gasp and a squeal of pure joy. "He approves of me." "He does," Liam confirmed, watching as Small Tyrant proceeded to rub against Avelia's hand, leaving orange hair all over her blue skin. "You should feel honored. He once ignored a visiting senator for 3 hours. I am honored." Avelia was now sitting cross-legged on the library floor, looking like a child on Christmas morning as the cat climbed into her lap. Well, onto her knee. Her lap was roughly the size of a twin bed. "Liam, I need to tell you something. On Tevara, if an animal chooses you, it means you are trustworthy. It is the highest compliment." "Small Tyrant's compliments usually come with claws," Liam warned, but he was smiling. Watching this 12-foot alien woman become completely entranced by a cranky cat was possibly the most adorable thing he'd ever seen, but not everything was perfect. That night, the first protest happened. The news showed up before Liam even heard about it from Avelia. 50 people outside the Tevaran embassy, holding signs. Earth for humans. Giant invasion. They'll crush us. The usual fear dressed up as patriotism. His phone buzzed. Avelia's message was brief. I'm okay. They are afraid. I understand. But I am still sad. Liam stared at the message for a long time. Then he did something he never did. He left his apartment at night, took the bus to the embassy district, and walked right up to the security barrier where Avelia stood with other Tevaran officials, all of them watching the protesters with expressions that looked remarkably like hurt. Liam, Avelia saw him and immediately crouched down to the barrier. You should not be here. It might not be safe. Exactly why I should be here, Liam said, surprising himself with the firmness in his voice. Besides, I brought something. He held up a box. Inside was a still warm blueberry pie from the 24-hour bakery near his apartment. You said you wanted to try more Earth food. I figured now was as good a time as any. Avelia took the box with shaking hands. Behind her, another Tevaran, a massive male with deep purple skin, let out a rumbling laugh. She spoke true, little human. You do not frighten easily. Oh, I'm terrified, Liam admitted. But fear doesn't mean you stop showing up for people you care about. The purple Tevaran's eyes widened. Then he placed a hand over his chest, in what Liam would learn was a gesture of deep respect. You honor us with your presence, Liam Park. That night, sitting on the embassy steps while protesters shouted in the distance, Avelia and Liam shared pie with plastic forks. She tried to describe the taste in Tevaran words, settling finally on, like eating a sunset if sunsets were sweeter and had crust. That's actually perfect, Liam said. Liam, Avelia said softly, you did not have to come. Yes, I did. He looked up at her, this beautiful, impossible being who could probably level a building but chose to study maps and befriend cranky cats. Someone once wrote on a map, "Here be beauty we have no words for." I'm starting to think they meant moments like this. Avelia reached out and very carefully ruffled his hair with one finger. You are going to make me cry, and I am not supposed to show emotion in front of the protesters. It would seem weak. Crying isn't weak, Liam said. Trust me, I'm an expert. She laughed, that wind chime sound, and several of the protesters actually stopped shouting for a moment to listen. It was, Liam realized, probably the first time most of them had heard a Tevaran laugh. It sounded nothing like a monster. It sounded like joy. But he also realized, watching the protesters resume their chanting, that this was only the beginning. The fear was too deep, too rooted in something primal. The difference between them was too visible. And size, as much as he was learning to not care about it in private moments, mattered a great deal in public spaces where fear lived. This is going to get worse before it gets better, Liam said quietly. I know, Avelia replied. But look at us, Liam Park, a giant and a man she could hold in one hand, sharing pie at midnight while the world protests. If this is not hope, what is? He couldn't argue with that. So he just reached up, and she reached down, and their fingers met in the space between their worlds, holding on despite everything that said they shouldn't. The invitation came on a Tuesday, exactly 3 weeks after the first Tuesday that changed everything. Avelia was being honored at a gala for her cultural outreach work. She wanted Liam to come with her, as her date, publicly. Liam stared at the invitation like it was a bomb that hadn't detonated yet. It's just dinner, Avelia said over video call, but her voice held a note of uncertainty. And speeches, and approximately 400 diplomatic guests from 17 nations. But mostly just dinner. 400 people, Liam repeated. He was sitting in his apartment, small tyrant purring on his lap, oblivious to his mounting panic. Watching me, us, together. We have been together for 3 weeks, Avelia pointed out. Unless I have misunderstood human courtship rituals entirely, you have met small tyrant. He has approved of me. In Earth terms, I believe this means we are engaged." Liam laughed despite his nerves. "The cat doesn't decide that." "Are you certain? He seems very authoritative." "Avelia." Liam took a breath. "I want to go, I do. But have you thought about how it will look? You're this amazing dignitary doing incredible work, and I'm just a librarian who faints at compliments. People are going to ask questions. They're going to wonder why." The screen went quiet for a moment. When Avelia spoke again, her voice was smaller than he'd ever heard it. "They will wonder why I chose someone so much smaller than me." "No," Liam said quickly. "They'll wonder why you chose me at all." They looked at each other through the screen, two people suddenly confronting the thing they'd been avoiding. Doubt. Not about each other, but about what the world would think of them together. "I will not force you to attend," Avelia finally said. "But Liam, I need you to understand something. In my heart, you are not small. You are not insufficient. You are not any of the things I see you believing about yourself when you think I am not looking." "How can you say that?" Liam's voice cracked. "Avelia, you literally carried me like a kitten. Children pointed us on the street. I saw someone take a photo yesterday and laugh. They laughed at us. They laughed at what they do not understand," Avelia said firmly. "But I would rather be laughed at with you than celebrated alone. Is that not what love is? Choosing someone anyway?" Liam's breath caught. "Love." She'd said love. He started, then stopped. "I need to think." He ended the call and immediately hated himself for it. The next day, Liam went to work but couldn't focus. He reorganized the same shelf 3 times. He dropped a reference book. He forgot to eat lunch. His co-worker Janine finally pulled him aside. "What's wrong?" she asked. "You look like someone told you maps are being discontinued." "Oh, see, Avelia invited me to a gala," Liam said. "A big one. Public." "And you're scared," Janine said. It wasn't a question. "I'm terrified." Liam slumped against a bookshelf. "Jan, look at me. Really look at me. I'm 5'7". I work with old paper. I have never been to a gala in my life. And she's this incredible being who could have anyone, and for some reason she chose me, and I'm going to embarrass her." "Okay," Janine said. "First, you're going to stop that. Second, have you considered that maybe she's terrified too? She's 12 feet tall. She's an ambassador. She speaks 7 languages. She's also alone on an alien planet where half the population wants her to leave and people laugh at her relationship. Liam, you think you're too small for her? Maybe she thinks she's too much for you." Janine poked him in the chest. "Get out of your own head and think about hers for a minute." That night, Liam didn't call Avelia. He told himself he needed more time, but really he was too ashamed of his fear to face her. Avelia didn't call either. On the 3rd day, Small Tyrant started acting strange. He sat by the door, yowling. When Liam tried to work from home, the cat knocked over his coffee. When he tried to watch TV, Small Tyrant sat on the remote. "What?" Liam finally snapped. "What do you want?" The cat walked to the door and meowed pointedly. "You miss her," Liam realized. "You actually miss Avelia." Small Tyrant meowed again, this time with what could only be described as judgment. "A cat is giving me relationship advice," Liam told the empty apartment. "This is where I am in life." But the cat had a point. The next morning, Liam called Avelia. She answered immediately, and he could see she hadn't been sleeping well. There were shadows under her silver blue eyes that hadn't been there before. "Liam," she breathed. "I'm sorry," he said quickly. "I got scared and I handled it badly, and I'm sorry." "I am sorry too," Avelia said. "I pushed too quickly. I forget that you have spent your whole life feeling too small, and I have only spent months feeling too large. Your pain is older than mine." "It's not a competition," Liam said softly. "Avelia, can I come over? I need to say something in person." An hour later, Liam stood in the special receiving room at the embassy, designed for meetings between humans and Tavarans. Avelia was there, seated on a bench made for her size, and the difference between them had never felt more obvious. "I want to go to the gala," Liam said without preamble. "I'm still terrified. I will probably embarrass myself at least twice. But I want to go because—" He took a breath. "Because you were right. Love is choosing someone anyway, and I choose you, even though you could literally use me as a bookmark." Avelia made a sound between a laugh and a sob. "You would be a very good bookmark. You could tell me if the book is accurate. See, you're already thinking practically about it." She stood up, crossed the room, and knelt down until they were eye level. "Liam Park, I have been thinking. You believe you are too small for me. But I have been learning about human history. Your species conquered this planet while being some of the smallest apex predators in its history. You did not win through size. You won through stubbornness, creativity, and the absolute refusal to accept that size matters." "That's a very generous interpretation of human history," Liam said. "It is accurate," Avelia insisted. "You humans are terrifying because you are small and you simply do not care. You look at animals 3 times your size and think, I will ride that. You look at mountains and think, I will climb that. You look at space and think, I will go there. You look at 12-foot aliens and think, I will date that." She reached out and gently cupped his face. "You are not too small, Liam. You are perfectly, stubbornly, beautifully human-sized, and that is exactly enough." Liam felt tears running down his face. "I really like you," he managed. "More than like." "I love you," Avelia said simply. "I have loved you since you fainted at my feet like an overwhelmed maiden in a historical romance. It was adorable, and I will treasure that memory forever. I'm going to faint again if you keep talking like that." "Then I will catch you," Avelia said. "I will always catch you." They stayed like that for a long time, her hands framing his face, his hands gripping her wrists, anchoring each other in a world that didn't quite know what to do with them yet. "There's something else," Avelia said finally. "The protests are getting worse. There is talk of new legislation to limit Teveran movement in human cities. The gala is meant to show positive relations, but—" She hesitated. "My presence there might make things worse. There are those in my delegation who think I should return to Tevera, that I'm causing too much controversy." "No," Liam said immediately. "You're not leaving. It may not be my choice. Then we make it your choice." Liam straightened his shoulders. "We go to that gala. We show them that this works. That we work. And if people don't like it, that's their problem, not ours." Avelia smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You have more faith in us than I do right now." "Then let me have enough faith for both of us," Liam said. "At least until you're ready to believe again." She pulled him into a hug, and for a moment Liam understood what it felt like to be completely encompassed by someone who loved you. Her arms wrapped around him entirely, her head bowed over his, and he felt safer than he'd ever felt in his life. But outside the embassy, the protesters were getting louder, and somewhere in the halls of power, people were making decisions about Teveran rights that neither of them had any say in. The gala was in 3 days, and Liam had no idea if they would even get to attend before everything fell apart. The gala was meant to be a celebration. Instead, it became a siege. Liam arrived at the Grand Pacific Convention Center in a suit he'd borrowed from his roommate and shoes that pinched his feet. Security was everywhere. Barriers, metal detectors, nervous-looking staff checking credentials 3 times. Something was wrong. You didn't need this much security for a cultural celebration. He saw Avelia across the lobby and his breath caught. She wore something that looked like flowing water made solid, colors shifting between blue and silver as she moved. Her white hair was unbraided, cascading down her back like a waterfall. She was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. She was also surrounded by 6 Teveran security guards, all of them scanning the crowd with expressions that suggested they expected trouble. "Liam!" Avelia's face lit up when she saw him, but the worry didn't leave her eyes. "You came." "Of course I came." He reached up and she bent down so he could take her hand. "What's going on? This is more security than the president has." "There have been threats," Avelia said quietly. "Specific ones. Against me, against any humans who support us. They are saying if the integration treaty is signed tonight, there will be consequences." "Then we leave," Liam said immediately. "This isn't worth your safety." "The treaty is worth everything," a new voice said. Liam turned to see a Taveron even taller than Avelia, with deep purple skin and eyes like molten gold. The male from the embassy protest. "If we leave because of threats, we tell humanity that intimidation works, that fear wins. We cannot do that." "Kelrath is right," Avelia said. "We must stay. But Liam, you should go. If there is trouble, I cannot protect you and fulfill my duties." "I'm not leaving you," Liam said firmly. Then, because he was learning to read her expressions, "And you don't want me to leave either, so stop pretending you do." A smile flickered across her face. "You are learning to argue with me. I have taught you too well." Someone had to. The gala began with speeches. Governor Harrison spoke about cooperation. The Taveran ambassador spoke about mutual respect. Protesters outside chanted loud enough that they could be heard through the walls. Inside, the tension was thick enough to cut. Liam sat at a table designed for mixed-species seating, which meant it was 5 feet tall and he needed a booster seat. He refused the booster seat. Some humiliations were too much. Avelia sat beside him, or rather, sat at a scale where beside him made sense. She kept one hand near him at all times, not touching, just close. A promise that she could reach him if needed. Dinner was served. Liam pushed food around his plate, too nervous to eat. Avelia managed 3 bites before giving up entirely. Around them, conversations happened in multiple languages. Cameras flashed. Somewhere, a string quartet played, the music barely audible over the noise. Then the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in a second later, bathing everything in red. Screaming, people running. And through the chaos, Liam heard something that made his blood freeze. Mechanical footsteps. Heavy, getting closer. "Everyone down!" someone shouted. Liam felt Avelia's hand close around him, lifting him bodily as she stood. Through the crowd, he saw it. A military exosuit, 15 feet tall, bristling with weapons. Non-lethal, hopefully, but at that size, the difference between non-lethal and lethal was academic. The pilot's voice boomed through speakers. "This treaty is an invasion. We will not allow Earth to be conquered without resistance. The giant threat ends tonight." The exosuit's weapon systems powered up, targeting lasers painting red dots across the Taveran delegation. Avelia stepped in front of Liam, making herself a shield, and he felt a surge of terror that had nothing to do with his own safety. "Please!" Avelia's voice rang out clear and strong. "There are civilians here, humans and Tavarans. Whatever your grievance, it is with me, not them. Let them go." "Your kind are the grievance," the pilot snarled. "You come here, you take our resources, you corrupt our people with your presence. Look at you. Look at what you've made them worship. Size, power. You make humanity feel small." "I make one human feel loved," Avelia said quietly. "Is that so terrible?" The pilot's response was to aim directly at her. "Giants have no place on Earth." Everything happened in the span of 3 heartbeats. 1. Liam saw the exosuit's finger move toward the trigger. 2. He remembered something from his research. The old library blueprints, the emergency systems that connected to this building because they shared a water main, the fire suppression system. 3. He ran. "Liam, no!" Avelia's voice chased him, but he was small enough to slip through the panicking crowd where she couldn't follow quickly. He knew this building. He'd researched it for a map archive expansion project that never happened. He knew where the manual override was. He found it in a service corridor, a glass case labeled "Emergency Use Only." He smashed the glass with a fire extinguisher, ignoring the pain as shards cut his hand, and pulled the lever. Every sprinkler in the building activated at once. Water poured from the ceiling in sheets. The exosuit, designed for outdoor combat, hadn't been waterproofed for indoor operations. Its exposed wiring began to spark. The pilot realized the danger too late. The suit seized, frozen mid-step, systems short-circuiting. The pilot was trapped inside, and Liam could hear him screaming as the cockpit began to fill with water from the compromised seals. Liam ran back to the main hall, his hand leaving a blood trail. The scene was chaos. Security trying to evacuate. Tevarans attempting to help humans to safety, and in the center of it all, Avelia staring at the frozen exosuit, at the pilot drowning inside his own weapon. She could leave. She should leave. Every instinct probably told her to run. Instead, she walked toward the exosuit. "Avelia, no!" Kelrath shouted. "He tried to kill you." "And I will not let him die," Avelia said calmly. Her hands found purchase on the exosuit's chest plate. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a sound like thunder, she tore the armor open. The pilot fell out, coughing water, gasping for air. He looked up at Avelia, this giant being who could crush him without effort, who he'd just tried to murder. His face showed pure terror. Avelia knelt down, making herself small, and spoke softly enough that only those close could hear. "You are safe now. I will not harm you. Even though you wanted to harm me. Because violence is not the answer to fear. It never has been." The pilot stared at her, something breaking in his expression. Then he began to cry. Cameras had been rolling the entire time. Every news outlet on the planet would have this footage by morning. A Tevaran, faced with her would-be murderer, choosing mercy, choosing gentleness, choosing to save rather than destroy. Liam pushed through the crowd until he reached Avelia. She was still kneeling, wet, exhausted, shaking slightly from adrenaline. When she saw him, relief flooded her face. "You are hurt," she said, seeing his bleeding hand. "I'm fine," Liam said. "You're alive. That's what matters." "You could have been killed," Avelia whispered. "Running off like that. You terrified me. I had to do something. I couldn't just watch while someone threatened you." "You activated a building-wide fire suppression system using knowledge of historical blueprints," Kelrath said, appearing beside them with something like awe in his voice. "That is the most human thing I have ever witnessed." "It was the most terrifying thing I've ever done," Liam admitted. His legs were shaking now that the adrenaline was wearing off. "I thought it wouldn't work. I thought I'd just make things worse." Avelia reached out and gently pulled him against her. "You saved everyone in this room, including him." She glanced at the pilot, now being attended by paramedics. "You proved that humans are not violent by nature, that you solve problems with cleverness, not force." "I learned from the best," Liam said, looking up at her. "A giant who chooses to be gentle." Around them, people were beginning to realize what had happened, that a librarian and an alien had just stopped what could have been a massacre, that violence had been met with mercy, that the biggest person in the room had also been the kindest. But as security finally got control of the situation, as news crews swarmed outside, as the reality of what almost happened settled in, Liam felt Avelia's hand tighten around him. "This will not end here," she said quietly. "There will be others, people who see us as a threat, who see you as a traitor for caring about me." "Let them," Liam said. "Let them see exactly what we are. Two people who chose each other in spite of everything telling us not to. If that scares them more than that exosuit did, that's their problem." Avelia looked down at him, water dripping from her hair, blood on his hand, both of them trembling but standing together. "Liam Park, I think I love you even more in this moment than I did when you fainted at my compliment." "I'm going to faint again if we don't sit down soon," Liam admitted. "I'm running purely on terror and caffeine right now." "Then let us sit," Avelia said. "Together. Always together." They sat on the floor of the ruined gala, holding hands while chaos swirled around them, and waited for whatever came next. The video went viral in 17 minutes. Not the violence, not the exosuit, not even the dramatic rescue. What went viral was a 15-second clip of Avelia kneeling beside her attacker, speaking softly, choosing mercy. Within an hour, it had been viewed 40 million times. Within 6 hours, it had crossed 1 billion. The world had seen Tevarans before, but they'd never seen one cry. Liam watched the news coverage from Avelia's embassy quarters, his hand bandaged, exhaustion pulling at every bone in his body. Avelia sat beside him, or rather, sat at her scale beside him, which meant her knee was at his shoulder height even when they were both seated. "They are calling you a hero," Avelia said, scrolling through her tablet. "The librarian who saved the Peace Summit with historical knowledge and a fire suppression system." "I pulled a lever," Liam said. "You're the one who tore open an exosuit with your bare hands." "We did it together." She looked at him, and her expression was complicated. "But Liam, there will be consequences. For both of us. Already there are people saying I should return to Tevara, that my presence here causes too much conflict. And you," she hesitated, "you have been doxxed. Your address, your workplace, your entire life has been published online. People are sending threats. To me." Liam couldn't quite process that. "Why?" "Because you proved something they did not want proven," Avelia said softly. "That humans and Tevarans can work together. That size does not determine worth. That a small person can be brave and a large person can be gentle. They hate that. It destroys their narrative." Liam was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood up, walked to the window overlooking the embassy grounds. Below, he could see 2 distinct groups. On the left, protesters with their signs. On the right, a smaller group of people holding candles, signs reading, "Love has no height," and "Giants welcome here." "Tell me something," Liam said. "If you go back to Tevara, what happens to us?" "I do not know," Avelia admitted. "Long-distance relationships across interstellar space are challenging." "That's not what I'm asking." Liam turned to face her. "I'm asking if you want to go, if this is too hard, if I'm too much trouble for what I'm worth." Avelia stood up so fast her head nearly hit the ceiling. In 3 strides, she crossed the room and knelt in front of him, bringing them eye to eye. "Liam Park, you listen to me. You are worth every moment of difficulty, every protest, every threat, every compromise I have to make to exist in your world. You are worth all of it and more." "But am I worth giving up your home?" Liam's voice broke. "Because that's what they're asking you to do. Stay here and be controversial, or go home and be safe." "You are my home," Avelia said simply. "Wherever you are, that is home." Liam felt tears on his face. "That's not fair. You shouldn't have to choose." "Then we make it so I do not have to." Avelia's expression shifted, determination replacing the sadness. "The treaty signing is tomorrow. If it passes, Tevarans will have full diplomatic status on Earth, permanent residency rights, protection under human law. They cannot send me home if I have legal right to be here. And if it doesn't pass, then we face that together." She reached out, cupping his face with infinite care. "But I believe it will pass, because of last night, because they saw what we could be, what we are." The next day, they went to the treaty signing. This time, there were no exosuits. No protesters breaking through barriers, just thousands of people, human and Tevaran, gathered in Pioneer Square to watch history being made. Liam stood with Avelia at the edge of the platform, close enough to see, but not on stage. He was nobody official, just a librarian who happened to fall in love with someone from another planet. But when the governor approached the microphone, he gestured toward them. "Before we sign this treaty, I want to tell a story. Last night, when violence threatened this process, 2 individuals stopped it. One with knowledge and quick thinking, one with strength and mercy, a human and a Tevaran, working together, choosing peace. If we can learn anything from their example, it is this: our differences are not weaknesses. They are how we complete each other. The crowd erupted in applause. Liam felt his face burning. Beside him, Avelia was perfectly still, but he could see tears tracking down her blue cheeks. The treaty was signed. Humanity and Tevara, officially allied, equal partners, no more guests, no more visitors. Citizens of both worlds sharing this one. As the crowd celebrated, someone in the front began to chant, "Perfect height! Perfect height!" It spread through the square, thousands of voices taking up the call, and Liam realized with shock that they were chanting about him and Avelia, about their difference, about their love. "I think," Avelia said, her voice unsteady, "they are making us into a symbol." "I think," Liam replied, "they're recognizing that love looks different for everyone." A reporter pushed through the crowd toward them. "Mr. Park, Avelia, can we ask you a few questions?" Before Liam could panic, Avelia scooped him up. One smooth motion and suddenly he was cradled in her arms, his face at the same height as hers. The cameras caught it all. Him laughing with surprise, her smiling that gentle smile. Two beings, absurdly different in size, perfectly matched in heart. "You can ask," Avelia told the reporter, "but we may not answer. We have celebrating to do." She carried him through the crowd like he weighed nothing. People parted for them, some staring, some smiling, some taking pictures. And Liam, who had spent his entire life trying to take up less space, suddenly didn't care who was watching. "Avelia," he said, loud enough for her to hear over the noise, "can you put me down?" She stopped, concern flashing across her face. "Of course, I am sorry, I should have asked." "Wait." Liam wiggled until she set him on his feet. Then he pulled her down to his level, his hands on either side of her face, and kissed her. The crowd went absolutely wild. When they broke apart, Avelia was staring at him with wide eyes. "You kissed me, in front of everyone. You fainted at the thought of kissing me 6 weeks ago." "6 weeks ago I was terrified of being seen," Liam said. "Now I'm terrified of not being seen with you. There's a difference." "You did not faint this time," Avelia observed, that teasing note back in her voice. "I've been practicing exposure therapy. Also, I held onto your shoulders really hard." She laughed, pulling him close. "Liam Park, I am going to keep you forever. I'm counting on it." 3 months later, Liam moved out of his studio apartment into a custom-built home on the outskirts of Seattle. It had 12-foot ceilings, reinforced floors, and a cat door that Small Tyrant deemed adequate, though the servants could have done better. The house also had something else, a study, human-sized, filled with Liam's maps and books and research materials, his space, his sanctuary, a room where Avelia had to crouch to enter, where he was finally, perfectly, the right size. She found him there one evening, working on a new project, a comparative cartography study of Earth and Tevara, looking at how different species map the same types of terrain. "Can I interrupt?" she asked from the doorway, bent almost double to fit. "Always." Liam set down his pencil. "What's wrong?" "Nothing is wrong." Avelia squeezed through the door and sat on the floor, making herself as small as possible in the small room. "I simply wanted to tell you something. I have been offered a permanent position, Cultural Integration Director. It means I will stay on Earth indefinitely. They need someone who understands both worlds." "That's amazing!" Liam started to get up, but she held up a hand. "There is more. The position requires extensive travel. 6 months a year visiting different cities, teaching, learning. It is a great honor." She paused. "But it also means time apart. Unless what?" "Unless you came with me," Avelia said quietly. "As my partner, my advisor, I believe the human term is significant other." Liam's heart did that stuttering thing it did whenever Avelia said something that reminded him this was real, that she loved him, that she wanted him in her life, not despite his size, but including it. "I have a job," he said. "The archives." "I know. And I would never ask you to give up something you love. But..." Avelia reached into her bag and pulled out a tablet. "I have been speaking with several universities. They are interested in establishing a mobile archive program. Historical documents brought to communities that cannot access them normally. You would curate, I would transport. We would show people that history belongs to everyone, regardless of where they live." "You planned this," Liam realized. "You've been planning this for weeks." "I have been planning this since the night you brought me pie during the protests," Avelia admitted. "Since I realized that you were not someone who would be content to stand still while the world changed around us. You want to be part of the change. So do I. Why not do it together?" Liam looked around his study, his sanctuary, his perfectly sized space. Then he looked at Avelia, crammed into a room too small for her, asking him to see a bigger world. "Yes," he said. "Yes, let's do it together." "You are certain?" "It will be difficult. More protests, more stairs, more people who do not understand." "Good," Liam said. "Let them stare. Let them see that this works, that we work, that love doesn't require matching heights or matching species, or matching anything except matching hearts." Avelia's eyes shimmered. "That was very poetic. Have you been reading human romance novels?" "Maybe a few. Research purposes." "Of course, research." She reached out, and he climbed into her hand, letting her lift him until they were face to face. "Liam Park, I love you more than I can express in either of our languages. You are my partner, my best friend, my home. You are exactly the right size for all of those roles. And you," Liam said, kissing her gently, "are exactly the right size for me to look up to, literally and figuratively." They sat like that in the small study, her holding him holding her back in the ways he could. Outside, the world was still adjusting to the presence of giants among them, still learning that fear of difference could be overcome, still discovering that humanity's greatest strength had never been size or strength or power. It had always been the ability to love anyway, to choose connection over fear, to build bridges where others built walls, to see someone 12 feet tall and think not monster but perfect height. Because at the end of the day, that's what humanity did best. We looked at the impossible and made it work. We faced the unknown and made it family. We took our greatest differences and turned them into our greatest strengths. Liam Park, 5'7", librarian, fainter at compliments, had found his place in the universe. Not by growing bigger, but by realizing that big and small were just words. What mattered was the size of your heart, the depth of your courage, and the strength of your stubborn human refusal to let something as meaningless as height difference stop you from choosing love. And that, in the end, was the most human, fuck yeah, thing of all. 6 months later, they stood together at the dedication of the first Interspecies Cultural Center, a building designed for beings of all sizes. Liam gave a speech about maps and how they show us not where we've been, but where we're brave enough to go next. Avelia stood beside him, one hand resting gently on his shoulder, and said nothing. She didn't need to. Her presence said everything. They were different. They would always be different. And that was exactly, perfectly, beautifully right. Because love, as it turned out, had no height requirement. It just required the courage to reach for each other, even when the reach seemed impossible. And humans, Avelia had learned, were very good at reaching for impossible things. It was their superpower, their fuck yeah moment, their greatest gift. They reached anyway. They loved anyway. They built homes and lives and futures anyway. And in doing so, they changed the universe, one improbable relationship at a time. In the end, Liam and Avelia didn't prove that love conquers all. They proved something rarer, that understanding can. That sometimes the bravest act in the universe isn't fighting a war, but holding someone's hand despite the whole galaxy watching. Humanity's greatest rebellion has never been violence. It's tenderness, defiant and deliberate, in a universe that keeps telling us to grow harder. So maybe the real measure of our species isn't how tall we stand, but how far we're willing to reach. Tell me, if you met someone impossibly different from you, would you still reach out? Would you trust your heart more than your fear? And when the world tells you that you're too small to matter, do you remember that sometimes the smallest gesture changes everything? If you made it here, write the word REACH in the comments, because that's what this story was really about, the courage to reach anyway. Tell us where you're watching from. Subscribe if this story reminded you what being human feels like. Drop a like to help others find it. Share it across the stars. And don't miss the next story waiting right here on the final card. Because somewhere out there, another impossible connection is just beginning.